Yep, all set.
All right, so this is job cost review training. Slim, if you'll give me screen sharing, that would be awesome. On our agenda for today, we are going to talk about reviewing the job costs, how to handle coding errors, and we're going to talk a little bit about setting up the weekly cost to complete sheet. Salim will finish up with due dates and cadences for job cost reporting, and our next training, which will be how to do the cost to complete reports. So the first thing we want to look at is reviewing a job cost. So everybody here has reviewed job costs. We go through them over every week. For the sake of posterity and for a gold star on your forehead, why do we review job costs on a weekly basis?
Look for any runovers or expenses or incorrect entries.
100%. Gold star for Jack. So we look through our job cost, and this is an older job cost. I picked it because it had some notes on it. And the first things we want to do to go through the job cost is go through and just look through it for coding errors, right? So coding errors are pretty common when the guys click the wrong number when they log into T-Sheets. Maybe they've been doing demo work and they're logged into framing, or they're doing framing and they're logged into cleanup. Or one of the more common errors we see is they log everything to framing and nothing else. Or real common, they log everything to demo, they log nothing to cleanup. So then your demo ends up over, your cleanup ends up under, right? Other common errors are when we're going in and coding our trade quotes. So places to look for common errors. The roofing and siding guys tend to send in one bill for all the roofing and all the siding. And you'll see that gets coded in one place or the other, all to the roofing, all to the siding, and then has to be mixed. Another common framing error, or another common coding error, and a difficult one to kind of sort out, is what is floor framing material, what is wall framing material, and what is roof framing material. It all comes from TW Perry. Some of it still be on the same invoices, right? So it can be challenging to get that one sorted out correctly. So a few things on this particular project, and this is one that Salima did over the summer. And you can see what she's gone in and done. She's gone in and done an assessment of this project and put some notes in for Beth. Those get a little bit small. What she said here is, hey, Beth, please move $1,000 from exterior trim to floor framing materials and $800 from exterior trim materials to wall framing materials, which is just what we said, right? An invoice somewhere got coded. It all got coded into one location instead of multiples, which made a line item come over rather significantly, you can see. And so she's just going back through. She probably went back through, looked at her coding. Oh man, I need to adjust some of that, and then moved it around into its appropriate line items. If you'll do a save as here of the cost to complete, and I'll show you one of these in a folder. Put your initials at the end, AS, JC, right? And then send Beth a note and say, hey, I made some notes in the job cost. She'll go back and look at those. She'll make the adjustments. She'll send you a note back. It's real important that you then go back the next month and verify that adjustment was made. Beth is super detailed. She's super thorough. Every now and then she'll miss something, right? So you just want to make sure that error doesn't collect from time to time over and over.
Mark, I have a question for you.
Yes.
How does this job cost sheet get all the job costs? What needs to happen for things to be coded just to get to this sheet?
Great question, Andrew. You get a gold star as well. The information here comes from a handful of places. When everyone codes into T-sheets, both the field guys and the PMs and the PDs and the designers, they code into T-sheets, and they'll code their line item and they'll code it to a particular job in T-sheets. In order to fill out the material quotes, the estimates will come back in. They'll get signed off on. They'll get coded by the PM, coded by the PD, sent into Beth. Beth enters into QuickBooks, and then you get cost in your job cost. Same with your trades. One of the things that will make your job cost inaccurate or lag is if you're sitting on a pile of coding. So if Beth has sent in 15, 20 things to code, and it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get those coded and put in the system, your job cost will look better than they are because the coding has not been assigned, given to Beth, and entered into the system, right? So staying on top of your coding really helps keep things current. It also means you don't have to remember as much when you're assessing your job cost.
So
Andrew, does that
coding-
answer your question?
Yeah, so coding should be something that just gets put on everybody's calendar as a reoccurring event, correct?
That's correct. Yep. A more high scale effect of the coding running slow and also of the trades running slow billing us is our actual revenue that goes onto our P&L that, as Andrew and I will push out forward in a few weeks, drives our bonuses at the end of the year. All of that revenue is built off of the bills coming in, them getting coded, and them getting put into P&L, which then increases our revenue as we go along. So if trades are lagging billing, which they'll do, and we're lagging them putting the coding in, our revenue will not reflect at the level we want it to reflect. So the coding is super important. A, that it's accurate, and B, that it's timely, so that all the reporting works correctly. Okay. Other things that we want to look for on a job cost report. To Jack's point, we want to look for obvious over and under budget categories. So again, this one stuck out to Salima because it was so far over. At which point she went and looked at it and made the assessment: is it a coding error or do I have an issue? So most of the time, you should not be surprised by your material and your trade quotes. Because you as the PM should know what I signed off on for my trades. Was it in budget? Was it out of budget? What was signed off for materials? Was it in budget or out budget? The places that you'll get surprised will be in particularly in-house labor, and also the framing and trim materials that we purchase in-house are particular places where you'll get caught by surprise if you're not out in front of your projects. So I put together. That was notes. Particular project I wanted us to look at from that standpoint, and I didn't go back and pull all this back apart, Salima. So this was a project that we ran last fall. Apologies to anybody I'm about to give twitches over. So when I go through the job cost report that was run in April, and there'll be a couple discussion points around this particular project. I'll go through this and I'll notice that there's nothing here particularly over schedule, over budget. You can see my site prep is over, which would have been the one hint in what we're about to talk about. And you'll see my wall framing is just leaked over a little bit. As a dollar amount, that neither one of those are heinous, but as a percentage of projection, they're significantly off of their projection.
That's the fourth column.
That is the fourth column. So you can see these are significantly over from a percentage of their projection, actually. Anyway. So we look through the rest of this and you'll see that there's nothing else particularly over budget here. Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse today. Until we go to the next month. And this was a very short project. It happened in a very short amount of time. And then we go back and we look at the next month. We'll notice that all of a sudden, we've still got a little overages here, a little overage here, another little overage here. And then we have a monster. Right? So literally in 4 weeks, this project slipped $6,000 almost in 4 weeks. 4,300 in that line item alone, so almost 5. So when you're looking through your job cost and you're early in a project and you see, man, my labor is starting to leak up, there's an indication there that something might not be going the way it was planned, right? So this is one of the like critical over under budget categories for us to keep an eye on. And then we'll talk a little more about how do we see it going forward? How do we look at it going forward, right? So in this case, that over under hint would have told me something's not going the way it's going. I might have pulled out my schedule projections for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks and go, okay, how much do I have scheduled in this project for in-house labor? Am I going to be way over budget? Do I have too many guys booked for too many hours? Or are the guys that I have missing their mark and I got to go back and figure out how to bring them back in? So this is a key over under item to look for, right, when we're reviewing job costs. Two items to keep in mind when we're looking at particularly in-house labor in a job cost report. The in-house labor only comes into the job cost report every other week. So the week that you get paid, the job cost report will have updated in-house labor hours. Beth will run the whole payroll for 2 weeks. She sends out everybody's paycheck, and then she updates the job costs with those hours. So when you look at your it's super critical to keep an eye on this item, because when you're in between those every other week, that labor hours can run, especially in an intense project like Trask is framing right now, Selaznik is framing right now, Ruelis is framing right now. That's an intense 2 weeks. A lot can happen in 2 weeks. So it's a time when you see, okay, hey, things are starting to go a little bit sideways. You want to look at it because you got 2 weeks to manage that, and then you're going to get a report with all the information of what happened, right? This is a great leading indicator, and something that we want to super be on top of as we're looking at our job costs.
Mark, that's a great point. Is it possible that I could phrase it a different way?
Yep, do it.
That's a wonderful point, right? So tracking our in-house labor is important. So this particular tool is lagging. It's lagging between 1 day and 2 weeks, because that would be the increment that we're looking at every 2 weeks. So we could get bills that came in up to 2 weeks ago and you wouldn't see it on the previous one, but then you'd see it on this one for the labor hours. And so when we look at it, that's when we try to hit a schedule, because we build the schedules based on the estimates. And as soon as we get derailed from the schedule, that's when we would start getting overages on our in-house labor hours. And then when you build the schedules, that would also be based on a certain number of people, like guys in the field on the job. So if the schedule is built to have 2 guys in the field, then you want to be conscious. If you have 3 people on there, then they would need to get done early. And if those then get done late, you'd have to assess. You got to use your job cost to assess how many days left you have of labor on that job.
Hey, Mark, can I share my screen for a second?
Yep, I'm out. You can.
Okay. This is the part that I personally struggle with, so I just want to make sure that it's clear to me. I don't know if you guys can see my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So payroll, the last one was on the 14th.
That's correct.
The job costs come out every Wednesday.
Correct.
So the job costs prior to the 14th would have come out on the 13th. Where does the 13th job cost cover?
It covers from Monday the 28th until Friday the 8th.
So from Monday the 28th until Friday the 8th, right before that week of payroll.
Right, that's correct. So you and I approved T-sheets on Monday the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
We will have approved the prior 2 weeks. Beth runs it on Tuesday, pays it on Tuesday. She runs the job costs on Wednesday. So it's always 2 weeks back.
Correct. So I apologize. I needed to restate what I had said. So when you review job cost, at that moment in time, it's still 3 days minimum lag. So it's between 3 days backwards, which would be from the 13th to the 8th, up to 13 days. working days backwards. So it's
Okay.
always lagging by 3 to 13 days.
So if it's a payroll week, it's the 2 weeks prior. If it's not a payroll week, so the one that's gonna come out tomorrow, the 20th, what would that cover?
It would have no additional in-house labor in it at all. What you would want to go back and look at is what did I spend between the 11th and.
Thanks.
She's still here.
Yeah, I know, I told her. Thanks.
Hey, Jack, can you mute for us? So when you look at the one that comes out on the 20th,
Mm-hmm,
you would need to be looking back at what you spent last week from the 11th to the 15th
mm-hmm.
and what you're projected to spend this week from the 18th to the 22nd.
But none of that is in the job cost.
None of that would be in the job cost. It would
In-house
not
labor.
update again until the 27th.
Got it. Okay,
Everything would be updated for vending
for trade.
trades, but
Okay.
not labor.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
So Salim, I think you and Oz and Jack will probably want to work on a routine of how we look at what we spent, how we've got booked to spend, right? Oz, for me, when I was PMing, I would look at my schedule and say I'm 50% through my framing, but I've used 70% of my framing labor. I'm probably going to be over budget. I'm 50% through my framing. I'm 40% through my framing labor. I might be under budget. Right. And that way I could always manage, kind of predict where my crews were and who do I need to go hurry up and who do I need to help move faster. And okay, I'm going to be over. Where can I go save money? Right. That way I can see it ahead of time before it got to me, right before it got on me. Does all that make sense? Is that?
Yeah, that's clear now. It's a little confusing, but it's clear now. Thanks.
Okay. Oz, have any questions?
Not really. I mean, this point was like very good. How we can, shuffle these guys and then, cover up whatever is over budget or under budget.
Yeah. Well, and you guys are very good at knowing where you're at and being able to control your project. The hardest part, like the biggest art form, is managing the in-house labor. Right? Where am I at? How much have I got left? Where am I going to end up? It makes a big difference. The last little items I was going to look at on before we abandon that subject and move on is to always then, you want to make the same application on your supervision line. Because you'll notice this project jumped off the supervision chart as well. Right?
Since we did this project, we broke that supervision into 2 separate line items. So one is going to be for project management, and then one would be for the actual lead carpenter on site doing on-site supervision.
Yep. So you want to do the same thought process down here. In most cases, you'll have spent all your design money. Your designers will be out by the time you get this far in most projects. But you would still have had some PD's time that you're going to have to spend here and some supervision time you're going to have to spend here. So if you went in your job cost and said, hey, I'm going to be $1,554 over on supervision, but you had 3 weeks left in the project, you would be understating your supervision at that point in time. Because you're going to be over there for 3 or 4 hours a week for the next 3 weeks, which means you're spending more than the overage.
Another pitfall that I see if you go back to share that screen, Mark, of things that I note when I look at job costs that are pretty easy to pick up is what line items had nothing in the estimate but have dollars coded to that time. That could be whole categories, or that could be individual line items. So right there is a field meeting, right? So typically you wouldn't put a field meeting towards a project. So that would be just something that I would circle. And then when you, like a lot of times when you're reviewing job costs, it's just about, having questions, and those questions might go to Salima and they might go to Beth for just clarifications on what this is. So a lot of when I review job costs, I send then a list of questions to Beth just to say, what is this? What is this? What is this? And she just kind of gets that information back. So looking at that field company meeting, that would be one thing that's easy to take into account. But in general, I'll go over kind of two main areas that I see. One is for, just like what Mark is highlighting, labor, in-house labor getting coded to a category that should be a trade. So this is material, Mark, so that's -3, so that's not the end of the world, so that's going to be something different. But if we scroll up and we see that we had an insulator come in to insulate a project, then why did we have 3 hours coded to insulation? So I would just circle it, because I'm trying to figure out, is that a miscode, or do you want to talk to your carpenters on saying, why did you need to insulate for 3 hours? Like, what was the rationale behind that? And you can get feedback. Maybe it was an error that the insulators missed something. Maybe we need to go back and get a credit back from the insulator because of that. Or we had to go above and beyond because we didn't know something took place. But it's helpful to know that in kind of the assessment of how we're building the project.
There's a great example right there, that 100 exterior trim deck. It was a 0 in the estimate. This was all an interior project. It was a master bath, and there were $219 booked to exterior trim. Might have been a reason for it, but it would jump off the page. To Andrew's point, it would jump right off the page when reviewing the job cost.
So that's under labor. So that's like a glaring miscode, since this was a bathroom project.
Yep.
The other item in that same category, so taking a look at labor for trades is what I had mentioned. The second item would be, it's very easy to look under the categories that are selection items and see where, because all selection items, so windows, doors, plumbing fixtures, electrical fixtures, cabinetry, those are all pre-quoted before the job takes place. So it's easy to quickly look down a job cost and see where we're over budget on, say, 140 plumbing, 140-3. Were we on budget or under budget, right? So when you look at that, so right there, currently where we are in the job cost when this was snapped, you have to assume that we're going to need another $680 worth of plumbing fixtures to be purchased. If you ever see that line item over budget, then that's just a red flag. You would circle that and get with Beth, you get with Beth to understand what it is. But then the PD should know if we're ordering something that's more expensive than in the budget ahead of time. So those are all just indicators for conversational purposes. So yes, under that cabinetry material, we had $225 for cabinetry. We spent $1,400. That's a glaring red flag to circle that and say, what did we purchase on this project? In this project, we reused vanities. So why did we need an extra $1,000 worth of cabinetry? So you would look at those categories -3 for material, and the easy ones to do are going to be where we would pre-quote and then order off of a quote, which should be dollar for dollar. Right now with the coronavirus going on, we have escalation of materials, but that could be a quick indication right now of a potential additional work order for a client if that product end up to be more expensive. So it's a miscode. Some miscodes we found that they got coded to the wrong project. So it's the right category, wrong project. So you just want to verify, like, hey, there might have been a plumbing fixture that got coded to this job that should go to another job. You have any questions about any of that?
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Salim, I'm going to move setting up the weekly cost to complete spreadsheet to the cost to complete training. Now that I look at it, it seems out of place here, right? Unless we want to do that now. Yep. Okay. All right, so let's move on from this coding errors and let's look at setting up the job cost template now that we reviewed our job cost report.
Can I ask you one more question about the job cost?
Yes, please.
So in theory, that the left column on the job cost is the estimate. And that should match our estimate that we have in the Excel format that Jack puts together. What would make it that they don't match?
Yeah.
An AWO?
I would say Jack can't add, but that's probably not the right answer.
I was muted, so I couldn't answer. AWO.
Yeah, typically it's AWOs will change the job cost.
So those could be credits, those could be charges. Is there any other way that the left column, which is the estimate, would be different than the Excel estimate?
An error in the original Excel estimate would change the number. Probably not significantly, depending on what the error is, but an error in the original Excel formula could change the estimate.
Otherwise, I believe we all are correct here. The only way that that estimate changes is by additional work order.
So Mark, on the job cost spreadsheet, we could probably just go over like fields where everything goes. Maybe not go too deep into it, but yeah.
So this is our job cost spreadsheet template. One of the things that you'll notice about it is I did put a lot of notes inside the template. For how and where things should come from and how they should be entered, so that we just all have it in there for fresh memory purposes, right? So in this case, if we were going to set up Holbrook, we'll say Jack is the PM. These two items, estimate grand total and estimate current total, come from the bottom of your job cost report. So there's a total at the bottom. We have our estimated column and our current column. And in this case, which is not Holbrook, but we'll use it for the sample, we'll say 146,787. And we'll say the current job cost amount, 74,141. You notice that auto calculates in a percent complete, how far along the job is for the job cost. And the last thing we'll want to put in is the date. And the date should match the date on the job cost report that you're using. So in this case, if we were using Holbrook and we were using the job cost report dated 7/22/20, we want to make sure that that date, not the date you're doing the job cost report or the date you're working on it, but the date of the actual job cost report goes into this box. So for the third gold star of the day, why do we want the date of the job cost, not the date you're working on it?
Because that's the one you're working off of.
Right, so you can go back a month or 2 or 3 months now and go, which job cost was I looking at when I made that up? Oh, it's the one dated 7/22/20, right? So you can immediately go back and go, it was this job cost that went against this job cost to complete report. We'll hit a save as there.
We lost your screen share.
Whoop. So once we have that information in place, and you can see that it had been the first week we would have worked on this one, we'll do a save as. We'll go into the public drive, clients folders. Actually, let's go back. Production folder, cost to complete. We would go back under the PM. In this case, I think this one was buried in Salima's somewhere.
Mhm.
There'll be a Hallbrook there. And it'll want to go under CTC, cost to complete. And you'll see there's a collection of them here already. Hallbrook, cost to complete with the date. And this date will also want to be the date on the job cost report, not the date you did it. Right, for the same reference purposes. The last thing that we'll want to look at here is it's very important that when you're ready to do next week's cost to complete report, that you just simply make a copy of that tab, click create a copy, and move it to the end, so that the weeks flow from left to right. The reason we want to do that is you notice there's a tab here that says difference from the prior week. And this is set up from a formula standpoint to look at the prior week's tab in a specific box. If you copy them in the other sequence or pull a tab from another spreadsheet and put in, that formula will not work correctly. So you always want to make a copy, save it to the right so that the formulas work correctly. One other item to note, two other items to note here. And we'll just document them here so we all know them. I think we've all worked through them before. Once the project reaches 75% completion, you notice that the spreadsheet changes. It grays out one side, lightens up the other side, grays up the top adjustment log, and lightens up the bottom adjustment log. In the following training, we'll talk about what to do with this and how to manage it. The one thing I did want to point out is that this particular formula will point in the wrong place the first week that you go over 75%. In a follow-up training or individually, I can show you how to fix that, or you can just email me at that point in time and I can make that quick adjustment. There was a math formula this long to make it not have to be manually adjusted, so we left it the way it was. The other minor thing to note, you'll notice in the template there are zeros in each one of these boxes. These formulas work correctly when there is a number in these boxes. So if I accidentally, in particular, take the first one out of here, those formulas you notice.
Can I pause you on this? This is very, 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 very detailed on formulas and everything. We stay high level on like what we're trying to achieve on this sheet.
These are just two common errors we have with the reports not reporting accurately. That's why we added it. So we want to keep the zeros in here because these get changed quite frequently because they won't report. And the reason they won't report is it just needs a number in all these boxes. Right.
Mark, one of the things I also noticed is that if it's right at 75%, right on the money, it grays everything out.
Okay.
So I think you just need to add additional dollars to one column and then account for it.
And then it'll flip it.
Yep.
If it lands right on 75, it might gray both sides. You're correct. It is 75.
Yeah, you should be able to change that to, 75 and 75.001 or something.
Yeah, put in a buck or something somewhere and then we'll flip it all the way. Yep.
No, I meant in the original template. We can make it so the template will do it.
So that gives you just an overview of how this works. We want to go in and put to recap, fill in the information. Comes directly from the job cost report. We want to make sure that this date is the date of the job cost report. And then the rest of the items will go through at a later date from cost to complete. We want to make sure that we're copying left to right so that the formulas work correctly, and then do our save as into our job cost folder.
When is this?
Any questions?
When is that completing?
I'm sorry.
When does the PM's fill that out?
So the first one gets filled out when Beth originally produces the first job cost report. Right, so she has a tick off date in her system. She'll load a job cost report, and then you should fill this out at your next routine job costing. Salima, do you want to give us the last thing that we had on our routine or on our schedule was what are the due dates to review job costs and then update these cost to complete templates? What's the routine that the PM should be expecting?
So Beth will send out the job costs every Wednesday. And usually you'll get an email from her saying, hey, job costs are uploaded in the public drive. Once you get that email, it's in there and you can go and review it. The idea is to review the job cost prior to the weekly meetings with the DOP, because that's on the agenda, on the level 10 agenda for the PMs to discuss with the DOP, any hot items or regularities on the job costs. So they come out on Wednesdays. Obviously, you want to review the most recent ones. I think right now I meet with the PMs after they come out, so they'll have an opportunity to review the job costs before they come to that meeting. It's really important that you have up-to-date information that we can discuss at the meeting. Then the other thing is just to make sure that the job costs are accurate and have the most up-to-date information that we have. It's important for us to get the coding done prior to the job costs coming out. So coding for us is due by close of business every Tuesday, which makes sense so that Beth can get it uploaded and updated on the job costs. There's some things we can't control, like if trades don't send their bills on time, that's not something we can control. But what we can control is the bills that we have received. If they're sitting in the coding folder for a while and they haven't been coded, they're not going to hit the job costs. So our job costs look better than they are. I'm going to show you where the coding is saved so that we all know that we can go in there and code it prior to job costs coming out. So if you go in the production folder, scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a ZZ coding folder. It's 2021 in there. And Beth will typically upload these on the Thursday prior, and then it's due by close of business on Tuesdays. Right now, I've been doing them. It'd be super helpful for the PMs to do them for their projects. Oz, you and I have been doing them together. Jack, you've been pretty good about coding yours ahead of time, so I just need to look over and approve. But this is where the coding lives. If you go in there before Tuesday, just go put your notes in, save it with your initials so that I know you've looked at it before I do my final. And then once we have that done, the job costs are up to date after that. So yeah.
For the last gold star of the day, why would I as a PM want to code my own trades? Why would I want a job cost sign off on and code my own trades rather than having, say, Salima do it or a PD?
Because I know what's happening on the jobs. And I know if it's right, if it's completed, partial.
Also, if I have a chargeback, I know I can hold money, right? Don't pay this, pay half this. Chargeback coming. Yep, 100%. Gives you control over how and when you guys get paid. Any other questions? Anything else for us to on that subject?
Yep, I think this is pretty good.
I still have a question. So that spreadsheet that you showed, which was the cost to complete. So it was never really said when that is completed. When does that sheet get filled out? Salima, you had mentioned by the meeting you want the PMs to review the job costs. So when is actually that sheet filled out and reviewed?
So that sheet is filled out when the PMs are reviewing the job costs weekly. So the idea behind it is that every week you have information from the job cost on that sheet with up-to-date information. You copy it over every week and put more information as you get them. There will be a follow-up training for the cost to complete, which is what do we do with all that information that we collect weekly? Where does that reporting go? What happens with it? So that'll be in the follow-up training, which should be coming up in the next couple weeks. I'll let you know once that's scheduled. But we take all that information from the sheets and use it on the cost complete /WIP.
Is that problematic? Because I remember in another meeting we had, like Oz wanted to move his weekly meeting with you to Wednesday afternoon. So then in theory, Oz needs a window to get the job costs, review the job costs, ask any questions to Beth for any anomalies, and then fill out the cost to complete spreadsheet for the meeting with you that afternoon. Is that realistic?
It's realistic because Beth does not have to make that change instantaneously. We can account for the change on the spreadsheet, saying, hey, this looks like it's miscoded. There's a column for notes like you'll see on that spreadsheet. Hey, this looks like it's miscoded. This is what it should be. You can make a note about that. Go ahead and email Beth so that by the following week, it's been adjusted on the job cost and will reflect what's really happening.
So in your following down that path, in the training that we had for the weekly meetings that the PMs would have with you, they're supposed to give a under over for each week.
Mhm.
Is the cost to complete, is that how they get it?
Their over under is from information from reviewing the job cost, goes on that spreadsheet that we looked at, which will spit out the over under. And that is part of the cost to complete process.
Okay.
So they're kind of married, but for the purposes of this training, I think this is a good place to stop until we have that follow-up one.
Any other questions or anything else before we wrap up?
No.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.